the Grace report, long delayed, published yesterday. What was your reaction when you read it or read the findings?
Well, one of extreme sadness, anger, that a person that Grace in particular was so failed by the state in the totality of her experience, of her life experience, the absence of fundamental care and of a fundamental caring environment by the state and by the health board at the time, and that's what comes across in a very telling way. It, in many ways, that era does predate TUSLA. There was no TUSLA at the time. But that said, we had the Child Care Act had been passed in about 1991. There would have been various inquiries into childcare prior to what happened to Grace, and there was absolutely no excuse for it.
Now, 13.6 million euro, 8 years. And that term, justice delayed is justice denied. Now, she was compensated in the interim, so there was some rectification of the state for its failures. But still, getting to the bottom of those accusations from whistleblowers of accusations of sexual abuse, 8 years in the making.
Look, I'm on record in the Dáil last week in terms of, and I'm not making comments specific to this one because we have to accept the report itself. But you're right, it's taken 8 years. Close to 14 million, and probably will increase in terms of costs when full legal fees are in and so on. And, we do need to fundamentally reflect on how we're doing these inquiries, the effectiveness of them, and whether there's a better way of cutting to the truth and getting to the truth much earlier and much more effectively.
The trail would be fairly cold at this point after this report is now published in 2025.
Yes, and for all involved, it's far too long in terms of those who would have been involved either in the care of Grace, Grace herself, even though Grace was not conscious aware of the fact
is not
that there was
even aware that an inquiry
is
into her
underway.
well-being.
But nonetheless, people who have been in her family and people engaging with her and so forth, the carers all involved, it is simply far too long.
No,
and we do need to reflect on this because this is not the only inquiry that goes on for an undue length of time and costs an enormous amount of money.
The so-called ex-family, if you think of what they are accused of, and now, according to the Commission's findings, they can't prove. It doesn't entirely vindicate their name because there was emotional abuse, they say. No evidence of emotional abuse, but there was physical neglect and financial abuse.
Yes, and that's what the Commission is saying. Far more serious allegations had been made, which gave rise to the Commission being established. They have not been upheld, so to speak, or the language is that no evidence has been found. So that for all concerned, has to be deeply unsatisfactory.
Yeah, it's just leaving it hanging there because it says it's likely that the injuries perceived on Grace may have been self-inflicted. This is the kind of grey area. May not. Who knows?
Exactly. And that is not satisfactory ultimately. I do think the government accepts the findings, but I think the Oireachtas and all involved in public discourse on these matters really do need a hard think as to the most effective way of getting to the truth. I heard Bernard Gloucester saying this morning, the head of the HSE, that there had been an earlier report, I think he referred to the Divine report, which more or less came to similar conclusions.
So what were we doing for the last?
So, it would be remiss, I think, of the Dáil generally and the Oireachtas not to reflect very seriously on the modality and methodology of commissions of investigation and inquiries. Now, they take an inordinate length of time. They cost millions. And there's an argument to be had for strengthening our own institutions, bodies like HEQA, Health and Safety Authority, bodies like FISRU, which is the new GSOC, a new name for GSOC and so on. We should have institutions that can get these investigations done more quickly, more effectively, and get answers more because part of the purpose of this is to improve services, make sure these type of cases do not arise again into the future.
There was a very odd moment yesterday when Norma Foley was saying, I did want the other families, because there's a total of 47 out there. There were 7 complaints really to be investigated and 40 had no real complaints against their foster care. Wanted the families to have early warning of the publication of this report, and the Commission said no.
Correct.
And can you understand that?
Two things.
As an act of kindness alone.
I think look, it's a fundamental principle that those, in relation to which inquiries are underway or people who are involved should be notified in advance, in my personal view. And also, there is always a need for an executive summary to be to be written in respect of an inquiry of this size and scale. However, governments cannot interfere with any commission or cannot dictate to a commission in terms of how the commission does
But do you
its work.
understand?
And I fully understand it. I mean, the frustration.
I know the rules,
Yeah.
but I mean, do you understand the decision from the commissioner not to allow early warning to people who've been hanging on it
I don't.
for years?
I do not understand that. And that's a matter for the Commission to explain.
And we want an explanation, do we?
Well, look, I think it's a matter for the Commission to explain why it took that particular.
But just clarify, you want an explanation.
I would appreciate one, but I think it also should inform how we establish inquiries into the future. Because Number 40 is just in the job. This report, I think, came in at around last July, the report is difficult to read. I think they're up to 2,000 pages.
2,000 pages.
And therefore, that in itself, for people to read, people need to read it, and people need to obviously assess and draw its conclusions. But fundamentally, I think it comes back to the point. And look, Pat, we're at this very moment, there could be about 5 to 6 requests for more public inquiries into different aspects of life in Ireland.
You want our processes reformed.
But I think we have to really fundamentally look, is this the way to go? Because since 1998, the state has spent half a billion on inquiries. Some have been effective and some have had impactful and have led to change. But the enormity of the cost, when we still need resources for the children of today, and to make sure we resource, particularly children in very, very disadvantaged backgrounds or with significant dysfunctional backgrounds, it is arguable that some of the resources would be better spent on looking after them and the facility.
But we also need to get to the truth, and we need to find the perpetrators of any wrongdoing and deal with them in accordance with the law.
I agree, and I think we should be able to do that more effectively using the institutions that have been established to do that in the first place.